We are live from the Radical Books Collective and the Police Project and Suchitra's account. This is Bhakti Shringarpure. I'm with Madhuri and I'm with Suchitra in the big glasses. Just because we can't say we can't write our names here, so I'm introducing. But let's wait another minute or so. We have a lot to discuss. It's been kind of crazy, don't you think? Have you all been following all the news or have you all been avoiding it? I can't tell which way to go.
I've been a glutton. Yeah, I've been a glutton for punishment. I've kind of obsessively it's just been. I think I need to see a doctor at this point in time.
Yeah, agreed. Madhuri, you?
I have been on the avoiding generally, but I can't avoid, so I would like to exercise that option, but I can't. So unfortunately, I know what's going on. And I'm looking forward to the debrief because we don't have to be in it alone.
Sure.
Yeah,
definitely. We can wait another second and see. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're just waiting to see if more people are coming. And if not, that's fine too. All right. How's the cold in New York?
there's a thaw. The ice is actually melting, and all the chicken bones and dog poop and all of that stuff is slowly making its way onto the sidewalk. But at least it's not the
The real stuff of humanity.
it's like heinous, but at least it's warm. So I think we'll put up with anything because of it.
Very nice. Very, very nice. Well done. Well,
and I think Mamdani is $30 an hour.
What's happening?
Mamdani's $30 an hour to shovel snow is apparently a runaway success.
Very nice. Well done. Well done. Okay, let's get going. And if we have sound issues, Suchitra, we might turn on you and ask you to mute. So don't take it badly. All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Bhakti Shringarpure, and we are doing another episode of It's Not You, It's the Media. I'm joined by Madhuri Shastri and Suchitra Vijayan, and both of whom are with the Police Project. I'm also sort of an honorary of the Police Project, let's be real. And so essentially we are, talking once again about media gaslighting, how the media obfuscates analysis, critical engagement, and even sometimes is less of exposing things and more of covering them up. And this has just been on great display all of last week. So we've decided to go with all the stuff, all the dystopic things that have been going on last week. First is the great horrifying Hatefest by Trump at the State of the Union speech. It was absolutely grotesque. And then there was all this slurring at the BAFTAs, which are the British sort of Academy Awards for film and TV. And here what we had was a few incidents, some that were really played up by the BBC coverage and some which were covered up by the BBC coverage. So we wanna kind of unpack that a little bit because the media has horribly claimed it to be a battle between ableism versus racism. And this is just an awful framing and really unintellectual and really, really wrong. So we want to talk a little bit about that. Of course, in good news, Andrew X Royal is in the slammer. He's been thrown in jail. And but as we know, more bad things have come to light, such as the fact that he really had spy connections, such as the fact that the Israel connections are getting worse and worse when it comes to the Epstein files, and also the fact that the Department of Justice in the US has covered up tons and tons of documents, and it's just a massive cover up, and it's super embarrassing and super, it's actually just kind of frightening how bad, how much villainy there is ongoing. And then finally, of course, the great Prime Minister of India, Modi, is in Israel, and there is a absolute feasting on Islamophobia and general hatred. Even as reports about what has been going on in Gaza, a report came out that there were 900 bullets spent on the killing of aid workers in Gaza, and more children being arrested and brutalized every day, and it's actually just hell on earth. So and all this news, at the end of the day, works to also cover up the actual genocide in Gaza, the starvation in Sudan and Cuba, the stranglehold over Cuba in particular. Nobody reports on that. But let's get going with what you all thought about Trump's State of the Union speech. I actually punished myself and watched it. I forwarded a little bit, but I was kind of excited by Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib's, protests. So I was very keen to see that and support that. And at the end of the day, it was shocking and not shocking at the same time. It was a classic Trump. It was a rally. It was racist beyond belief. It was disgusting beyond belief. And it was just awful. So I don't know. Suchitra, you want to go? What were your thoughts?
For me, the biggest absence was that he never once mentioned Minneapolis, and I think that was like nothing. Not Minneapolis was never mentioned, and the moment when he called the entire Somali community pirates, and I think that's when Ilhan Omar said you're a liar. And then it was also for me just of course it was racist, and there were men in Trump, there were Republicans wearing ties that had Trump on his thing. It was an absolute disgusting spectacle. That for me, there were two big takeaways. One is just the coverage kept cutting to Ilhan Omar quite often, and I could just see the sheer agony in her face. And the second thing was just the demand for vengeance and blood, like the just wanting to go to war and destroy things. I think that those stood out. But this was also the longest. I think this is the longest recorded State of the Union. I think Bill Clinton was an hour and 20. Is last State of the Union, but this is an hour and 47 minutes. I just want to know. Apparently, he kept to the script. It's very, very annoying for me when I look at the coverage of the media. And one thing that the media actually congratulates Trump, despite what this was a grotesque performance of violence and misogyny, is they all said, "Oh, but he really kept to the script." And I'm thinking, who wrote this damn script, like in the sense that, like, who wrote this speech? But really for me, this speech is exactly where it is a reflection of the State of the Union. It is long, it's rambly, it is racist, it's violent, it's disgusting, it's full of lies, and it encapsulates the American moment, the ugliness of what the American moment is right now, precisely. And that's really what I thought the State of the Union was.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Suchitra. I just wanted to say also, in along with the bloodlust and the war and everything that you mentioned, there was also really one of the big, viral moments was when Trump was talking about basically dismantling sanctuary city protections, and that we know has been a big problem. So I think in that way, there was sort of Minnesota and even New York, which are creeping back into the sort of the conversation in a way where we know that this is going to be the next frontier, the complete dismantling of sanctuary city protections. Related to that, we know that in New York, where there are pretty robust but fallible, of course, sanctuary city protections, that ICE has started to buy up these centers around the city, just about an hour's drive upstate or, in Jersey or whatever it is. So they're not really here, but they're not far. And then there's these new detention centers that are opening up everywhere. So there's a lot of like subtext in that script, which I think is worth remembering. And it's worth also thinking about what that portends for us, the tragic stuff that's to come, and all the other places that, the Minnesota, what is happening in Minnesota is going to be carried out. So that's the kind of the horrible part. And then, I also think that there was some amount of coverage on this, but again, the invitees to the State of the Union, like, Trump invited like Erica Kirk and the U.S. men's hockey team, and apparently he issued an invite to the women's hockey team, but they respectfully declined. And then also there were some far right commentators who, yeah, and there were also the Democrats invited Epstein's family. I'm sorry, Epstein's family. The survivors' families. So I think it's really just the polarization, the real polarization that we are all experiencing here, or that people are seeing, was just on full display.
I know.
And it was just quite, so, there was a subtext and then there was a glaring overt text, and then the way Trump just was so disrespectful to Ilhan Omar, and
I know.
her courage and just the way he kept talking down. I mean, it was just really, really, it was awful. It kind of makes my skin crawl. I really admire that anybody who sat through the 1 hour and 47 minutes or whatever, because I was just like, I just couldn't watch it. And of course, I'm
Yeah.
not getting anything from the coverage,
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, I think talking about the Ilhan Omar and what she yelled out, she said, "You've killed Americans." What I hate, of course, is that the Republicans are so good at rallying their people and their script. It's like, who wrote the script? He's flipped the script. It's like he's completely in control of this ghastly narrative, and what would it take for the Democrats and liberal media to just applaud what Ilhan Omar said? Instead, it's like, that's not the right way, too far, all this kind of stuff. I mean, they can't even defend their own, and this is what sucks. And most of the coverage that I saw, other than the comedic one, was just about what were the takeaways and things like that. And yeah, it was an hour and 40 something minutes. And, as someone who abhors exercise and being athletic, I have to say, like, those Republicans, man, standing goal achieved for the next many, many weeks, because they stood up and sat down, stood up and sat down every 3 or 4 words out of their tyrant's mouth. And it was something to see. I mean, I was hurting for them, and I was thrilled if they were feeling hurt, but that was really astonishing. I thought that they were just, I mean, this is called allegiance. This
Oh,
is called
yeah.
obsequiousness, servility to
Yeah.
the regime. I mean, this is something to see. It's shameful.
It is shameful. And then on the other hand, I just think like it is just so like important to show that kind of solidarity and support when you are, I think that when you have an allegiance to the agenda, and at some point you're just like, I don't care who's going to advance my agenda, I'm just going to put my weight behind them. And I've always felt like this is where Democrats completely abandon progressives. They build, they get in power on the backs of progressives, and then it's just the minute progressives start to talk about progressive policies, they completely throw them off, and demonize them and villainize them and distance themselves from them. So in one way, yes, it is incredibly shameful. On the other way, I'm like, wow, I would love to see that kind of collective solidarity and commitment to the advancement of a progressive agenda from not the Democrats, but even the progressives.
Absolutely.
Um, I wanted
Absolutely.
to flag a comment from Anne Charles, who asks if we were able to watch the People's State of the Union. I did in bits and pieces. I think it was just Like there is just no coverage of the People's State of the Union whatsoever. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think that that is something that is worth for us to talk about in subsequent episodes. But there's nothing, like if you're not in the know, one would not even know that people refused, or, democratically elected representatives have refused to go to the State of the Union, and instead having a People's State of the Union. Like, I don't even think that this is a known fact. And then I see the New York Times has said, well, has a little explainer on how do they cover the State of the Union. And it's like, we sent 40 journalists and 14 photographers and everybody just crawling all over the White House. And when I read your comment, I said, well, obviously they do not care about anything other than clicks and coverage and what did he say and what manic insane thing is he going to say here that we need 40 journalists to be in the building to cover while there's a People's State of the Union happening. So yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up.
But also, after 40 journalists, and this is the best that you could cover, is also problematic for me. But I think for me, CNN's Alex Rod saying that, Trump actually appealed to his base, I thought was disingenuous, because that of course, Gallup poll is now stopped polling, but we know through other data that Trump is not doing as well with his own audience. So why I just wonder, this was a moment for mainstream media to really shine light on what is he saying, the fact versus fiction. I don't know, a couple of years ago when the whole Russia gate was happening, they would have this like fact check and disinformation. I'm like, you could have done this. You could have live checked his reporting. You could have bought in the numbers. You should have. And instead of that, the kind of punditry that they do, where they say things like, oh, I think he actually appealed to his base. No, his base is actually suffering. You are not actually covering the base. You cover the base when it seems like it gives you a particular narrative of what the MAGA is. And the reality is that Trump's base is splintering. And that is one of the most important stories of the day. And they could have used the State of the Union to cover that, and they didn't. And I think that is something that we have to think about. And I think that is something that we have to zero in on. His base is not happy. And again, I mean, did they actually send 40 journalists to cover the State of the Union?
Yeah, I think something like that. I'm going to find the article and put it on the chat. But yes, something like that. Yeah, indeed.
My God. Okay. Well, let's move on to the great BBC. I don't know how many people here watch the BBC. I do sometimes, and at least I certainly grew up very well colonized in India and always watching the BBC and all that jazz. And my God, how shocking and how grotesque they have proved in the last few years. And they just go on and on and on. And their mandate to censor anything to do with Palestine has now reached new levels. And what's interesting is that they used to have this mandate, and we're like used to it, right? They have this mandate, but now they have really shown their true colors, because at this award show they censored the Nigerian filmmakers, part of his speech where he said "Free Palestine." And then, because this wasn't live coverage, this was edited coverage that came few hours later. And then what they refused to do is censor the N word that was repeatedly blurted out by a man in the audience who had Tourette syndrome. And it really shocked Delroy Lindo and Michael B. Jordan, because they were on the stage, and we thought it was once, but actually it was yelled out 4 times, and the BBC gleefully left that in. And then there was a sort of a patch-up job that was done by the host, which almost made it worse, actually, because they couldn't really engage with the two issues that were going on. First was the issue of just the racism and the way in which these two major black celebrities were treated. And two, what is Tourette syndrome and what does it mean to engage with concepts of disability, accommodations? What do you allow? What don't you allow? How do you frame that? And you saw that this was just a massive disaster of epic scale. And then everybody's weighing in, and I'm sorry, nothing has satisfied. I don't know. Did any of you follow it, or how do we? Where are we on this?
No, I don't follow the BAFTAs. At one point in time, at least the fashion was good. Now that's also miserable. So, like, why would you follow the BAFTAs? I only found this out as I was doom scrolling in the middle of the night, and then the information was beginning to come. And the way I found out was just seeing these two men on the stage, and then you know, and then it was one of those TikTok videos in which you only see the video and you don't have any context. And I just saw these two incredible actors on stage about to, speak, and they hear the slur and you can see their face change. And then I was just like, does this happen? And my first response was to look at the caption and say, was this AI generated? Is this what we're doing? Because I couldn't believe that, not that I couldn't believe, it felt, um,
It's raw.
it just was just wrong and raw. And and then again, and then I saw the clip of the filmmaker saying free Palestine, which is also edited out. And so it kind of also, I was trying to piece things together in a way that was like, information was just coming out. And then as you started piecing these things together, my jaw was on the floor. I was just like, are we doing this? And then what really upset me was kind of reducing what happened, the real harm that happened, to a discourse between ableism versus racism. And I think that just really just
Can I offer like a very
yeah, of course.
pedantic comment on
Yes.
the idea of ableism versus racism? I mean, racism, sexism, ableism, they don't work separate from each other. They function only intersectionally and always together, and none is potent without the other. So it's like, this baseline understanding of the structure of these marginalities or these types of prejudices and forms of othering that are rampant in our society, this lack of understanding how they all function together, and to just pit one against the other is already just the most preposterous thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
anyway,
I
sorry,
think
go ahead, Mother.
Sorry, I think I wanted to say that because at its root, all of these isms are about dehumanizing people, right? Like that is the
Absolutely.
very core. And we have been saying this, why is Gaza, what relates Gaza to Epstein? It's the same thing. Like we're talking really again and again and again and again about the same thing. It is about dehumanization. And I really want to say, this whole, I would, if they've censored free Palestine, I always can't help but wonder what would have happened if the person had yelled out like an anti-Semitic slur. Would they have censored it? Probably. Would we have seen it? Probably not. Probably not. And so I just feel, would there be a real push for an apology? Yes, there would be a real movement in the case of an anti-Semitic slur. Is it just that we are just so like over, like black people just done? That's the vibe I'm getting. It's almost as if it's like, well, he has Tourette's, and that kind of trumps the structural racism you're facing. And it's kind of ridiculous because it's, disabled people can be racist, like it's just, I don't think that they are in different compartments. There's also this intersection, which is like the flip of what you were saying, Bhakti. Like,
Yeah,
perfectly,
black
like,
people
why not? Like,
and whatever can be ableist, we can all function within that.
Mhm.
But yeah,
yeah,
I'm
of
talking about the
course.
coverage.
Of
Yeah.
course. And so it's like to frame them as independent and like, oh, just be like, well, I get the disability accommodation. I understand it. But in this situation, I think it is being weaponized against the Black community. I think that this man um, should take, and I think when I say it's being weaponized, it's because it is kind of prohibiting or inhibiting rather any accountability, because I'm not calling this person a racist, even though I will stand behind the fact that disabled people can be racist. Maybe he's not, but he did say something, as Suchitra said, that was harmful. And then, disability or not, there is an accountability situation that arises. And disability accommodation cannot inhibit that. And that's what's happening. They've infantilized this person, which is also kind of it's kind of messed up to infantilize a disabled person like that. Oh, he doesn't know what he's doing. Like, please, that's very infantilizing. It's also a form of dehumanization. And then they are just saying that, he doesn't need to apologize because of this. So it's a weaponization of the disability accommodation. And I think that because we, as a society, repeatedly fail to understand why these accommodations are made, or we go so far in the direction of papering over the actual wound, we've pitted these communities against each other, and whatever the media has pitted these communities against each other, and we're allowing people to weaponize their identities. And I think it's all really messed up, actually.
Yeah. But also, I also went on a deep dive about the film itself. So the film, it's apparently a critically acclaimed film called I Swear. And the character that's supposed to represent Davidson says, "Fuck the Queen." And this is to Queen Elizabeth. And in the film, he immediately apologizes to the Queen and everybody else within the earshot. So, so in the film, this happens, and then, and then this is an essay that Robert Jones Jr., who's famously known as son of Baldwin, has an essay on a Substack, and then he asks this question. Therefore, the question remains: what is so different about Mr. Jordan and Elder Lindo that suddenly makes an apology burdensome, outrageous, unnecessary, and ableist? Right? I think that is it. I think I don't have to tell you because you already know. And I didn't know this because I didn't know the movie. So in the film, if you say "fuck the Queen" and then you apologize immediately in the film, in the representation where your story is being represented, where you're telling the story, you realize that telling to the Queen "fuck the Queen," and then you apologize to her and everybody else in the film.
My God, I had no idea. I had no idea about all this. This is crazy. This is horrible. But, it makes me think about the structure of these award shows, which are these spectacles, and in these spectacles, these types of debacles are so welcome. I mean, there was a time when they would plant feuds between two big pop stars, and then they would get lots of eyeballs. But these spectacles are so welcome and they just love it so much, which explains why they keep that and get rid of the politics, because they didn't just cut the speech, the Free Palestine part with the other filmmaker, but they also cut some ICE and anti-Trump commentary with some other award winner as well. But I think it reminded me a little bit of the excitement after Will Smith had slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars. And if that celebrity is a person of color, all the better, because then you can just pile on them like nobody's business. You can go nuts, and you get to be all excited and happy and gets lots of eyeballs, and your network is going to do really well.
No, and listen, I do want to say that in that instance, there were consequences for Will Smith. Like, he was banned from the Oscars for 10 years, whatever. There were consequences. And when I say infantilized, I mean like the literal definition of an infant is someone who doesn't understand that there are consequences for their actions, right? So there seems to be no consequences whatsoever. That's what bothers me, because it's like you can do things unknowingly that are offensive and that are hurtful, and you have to be accountable for it. It's just, and also to say, there's nothing, there's no excuse here. Like, your disability is not an excuse for accountability, unfortunately. And if the movie itself is saying that, I feel very comfortable saying it. And what I do want to say here, I mean, I'm seeing a comment that they would have absolutely televised the anti-Semitic slur just for narrative fodder, since Israel is losing the narrative war. I agree. I think they would have done it. And I think that they would have really piled on. People would be fighting to say, where's the apology? He needs to apologize. How could we say it? And the coverage would be completely different. The coverage would be centered kind of nuancedly on what we are saying, and so there would be this clamor, and it's almost like there's absolutely no accountability. And this has always been our problem, I think, with journalists and coverage, but also with like societal discourse.
That's how it is right now with the Berlinale, because they're trying to take the director to task, and Israel itself has spoken out and defended her and all this kind of stuff. I don't know the exact details and her name and things like that, but I was following all this. It's just, it's ridiculous. Yeah, exactly what you're saying. It's like happening somewhere else. But while we're on that side of the pond, in the great UK, we should be applauding at some level the fact that they have put Mandelson and Andrew behind bars, right? Something has happened. Meanwhile, here in the US, they're still covering up the rape files, and I don't know. I mean, should we take heart, or I don't know? Has the UK media been good about this? I don't know. It
So,
seems like they were holding
yeah,
into account at least a little.
yeah. I mean, I want to say that, NPR has said that the files that the DOJ is withholding are related to allegations that Trump sexually abused a minor, So they're really, really covering up stuff. I mean, it's like, it's really jarring in comparison with what is happening in the UK, which, by the way, I think the UK is doing the bare minimum, and it's like, how could you not? How could you not go after your former envoy, or, get concerned about your former ambassador? I mean, like, this is, and just to see, I think the UK government, like, backing the release of documents, them saying, like, yes, all the members of parliament saying, yes, release the documents, like, tell us what happened, like, whatever, these documents were sealed, now it's time to bring them on. That is heartening, and I think only because of only because of the way it is over here, covering up the president's allegations about assault on a sexual minor, a sexual assault.
I mean, is it because they just go after the royal family day in, day out? That's what sells the papers there? Is that a huge factor, or what?
They do never go after the royal family.
Yes, not after, but they are obsessed with the royal family in terms of coverage.
Right. Well, okay, well, in this case, it's working for me.
Yeah.
Like a broken clock. Telling her.
See, I think also the way the royal family is covered is always around the salaciousness, right? It's about the interpersonal relationships. This is him as him as a functionary of the state selling information or handing over information to Epstein. This is selling state secrets, which is a completely different ballgame than who you're sleeping with or how many people you're sleeping with, or is it a pig or a man or a woman in the room. Very, very different conversations, right? Like, and I think what is infuriating for me is also that because the coverage here, as Madhuri said, is so terrible that we think that what the British newspapers are doing is. But what I really like is the photograph. There's a very the photograph that was shot of him on the thing, which then now apparently somebody, as an act of protest, put in the Louvre. I don't know if that is.
Yes.
But I think one thing I would say is that accountability is something, at least for the first 48 hours, this was on every major newspaper, every major television show. They were asking about what does it mean for us to have this? What does accountability look like? And people are resigning. People are being held accountable. There is an actual discussion in the British Parliament where people are having those questions. That has not happened here. In the US, you literally have people denying that this happened, right? People are literally saying that this did not happen. And another thing that I found out was that of the tranches that were released, many of them were actually pulled back. And some of those information that was published, it was pulled back or deleted from the public domain. Not all of them have been republished, and some of them that have been republished have been republished with redacted stuff, which again means that what are they doing with all of this information? It's just like it's like a clown show, right? It's at this point in time, it's a clown show. But another thing that I also saw was that this happened for 48 hours, and immediately the conversation turned not about Andrew or accountability or pedophilia or Epstein, but about the royal succession. Like the real problem is William. Yeah. The entire conversation pivoted from, is this the end of the royal family? Like, is the biggest problem? And then somebody says, no, the biggest problem is not Andrew, but William, that the public does not like him. I'm just like, is that the conversation? So you're also seeing this narrative pivot where we're going from accountability, selling of state secrets, Epstein, pedophilia, what does it mean to have some of the highest ranking members of the British Parliament and the legislative houses in Epstein houses? There's this other guy who's in an underwear, right? Like, I mean, like, who are these people? Like, Um,
Disgusting. They're
and then the
disgusting people.
conversation then becomes about, oh, what about the monarchy? Well, nobody
I,
cares about
I
the
know.
monarchy. Like
Well,
nobody cares. Like,
if it is a conversation about whether it's enough of the monarchy, and like maybe this is the time to get rid of the monarchy because it's what I can't even begin. Obviously, maybe it's
Never.
yes, exactly. But
Never.
that's not the conversation, right? That's never the conversation.
Never, never. The
Um,
monarchy can line their pockets with the taxes from
that's
the
true.
British people, and people are just like, always need them in their lives. And the classic of any coverage of the royal family in the UK, that includes films, The Crown, all these shows. At the end of the day, they'll say, oh, the royal family, they're not, they can be naughty, they can be a little nasty, they can be a little disgusting, but they're human and they
Yeah,
have
right.
real person issues. And yes, Andrew is horrible, but let's think about bigger problems, William. I mean, this
Yeah.
is just, it's so desperately, desperately pathetic. But yeah, that's
So
just,
I think the
that.
one thing I wanted to bring up over here when we were sort of talking about, well, my problem has always been that there is this huge cover up. People know there's cover ups. People know what is being covered up, you know. And I'm just kind of at like in awe in a way, or shocked at how little push there is, from the public or from the media to hold these people accountable, to get the DOJ to release the files. Like, that is not even the discussion over here. And I was thinking this might be a really like ridiculous bridge, but what has sort of been reflecting the American mood, I feel, through social media and stuff, is this real um like deep being deeply enmeshed in fascism and patriarchy and supremacy. And there was an incident that occurred on you know, on Love is Blind. I'm very sorry to bring it in, but on Love is Blind, between two of the contestants who, the premise is you meet in the pod, so you don't see the person, you decide to propose to them, you decide to get married, and then you meet each other in the real world and see if it works out in 4 weeks or something. Okay. And often, people will meet their partners and not be attracted to them physically because it is a requirement of a marital relationship or a romantic relationship, and they end it. But this one person, Chris, basically tells his partner, Jess, who for all intents and purposes is like white, thin, doctor, owns her own place. He tells her, like, oh, I don't really like your body. I usually tend to date
What?
women who go to Pilates, and I tend to date women who really work on themselves. And he brings up this Pilates so much. And this guy is like, he's like, where does he get off? When you see him, it's like, where do you get off, saying that to anyone? But I think what this reveals is, I was watching a TikTok where the commentator says, it's male entitlement. There is this general, the whole show is about male entitlement and weaponizing, well, I need to be attracted to you. Like, I need to be attracted, and this is who I'm attracted
Work
to.
for it. You need to work for it.
Basically, yes. And like, you can't shame me if I'm not attracted to you for this reason. And Pilates, I think, has become a very, very red pill kind of situation, right? Like women going to women's studios and working on their bodies and being like able and thin and wealthy, all that stuff. And there's like a lot of seeding on social media against Chris, like rightfully. But I think it's really capturing this mood of male entitlement and complete depravity in our expectations of women, in our expectations of children, and sort of just like almost a resignation. It's like everything is becoming fodder for some kind of quick flash in the pan discourse with absolutely no accountability. It's like, how could this happen? Oh, well, how dare he say this? Oh, well. And it's just really, there's a resignation in what feels like the mood to me, which makes me kind of sad. And I feel like in these moments, I usually do expect the media to play the galvanizing role of not just recounting this like stupid Love is Blind fodder or releasing salaciously the Epstein files, but to really have a conversation around it that necessitates some kind of accountability, some kind of change, like doing something with this anger that has nowhere to go right now, you know? And it
Yes.
was just kind of a microcosm. It reminded me of these like larger discussions around
But
Epstein.
what you're saying, Madhuri, is also what played out with the hockey, right? Like the hockey, the American hockey, the men win the hockey, and then Trump calls them, and these men behave so poorly.
Mhm.
And he talks, says and Trump throws shade on, oh, I have to women, invite the women. No
Right.
sportsmanship. And now that everybody is like upset with this behavior, they're like, oh, the president called. We were so happy. And that's a reason for you to act like, like clowns. And I'm
Yeah,
thinking, like, imagine like winning the gold and still acting like losers is also male entitlement. I think that
totally.
kind of the culture pervades everything. And it's just, it's almost disgusting that we are in this place. And I think that,
Yeah,
and that sense of justification of entitlement affects everything from Love is Blind to the Epstein files, because it's like, yeah, of course men with money would do this, right? Why else would they not do this?
I know, and I think at least last term we were having these conversations about locker room conversations and like what does that mean and locker room culture and all the stuff that he said and the it was even that is gone. Have we just become so resigned to male entitlement that I mean it's
Yeah.
playing out everywhere and we have just been like whatever.
Yeah, I
And
know. Gender discourse feels like at an all time low, actually. And I
completely.
think this is what scares me so much about the Epstein files and the way it's being covered is just how much public opinion is going to become managed and diluted, and it's like you know the Me Too moment did something, and I know we keep going back to the Me Too moment when we think about the Epstein files, but it's just like we're going to go back, you know, we're going to go back like 5 decades with the way the Epstein files are being covered, and it just scares me. And even at the State of the Union, there was a sort of a very uh, intense shoving down of certain gender values, right? Because they had this woman who has been trying to have a baby, and then they were like, she's going to have IVF, and Trump was like, you're going to have a beautiful family, and you're going to have a baby, and this kind of almost like this breeder discourse, and she had to stand up, and she was happy, and of course, I mean, sure, you want to have a baby, you have a baby, but it's just the way it gets framed. And of course, I want support for women who require IVF treatments and all this kind of stuff. But the way in which it's framed and the way in which MAGA engages with women and gender and pits them, to the world, we should all be extremely scared, along with the Epstein file, like, thwack on our faces. It's so intense. It's painful, honestly.
Yeah, and terrified because of the media absolutely abdicating its role as any kind of watchdog, any kind of reflection of the public mood, and instead becoming like the spokespaper of the state. Every single
Yeah,
liberal media that we know. I think this is
I
a
know.
really terrifying time. Yeah.
I know. Should we don't have a lot of time. Does anyone have anything to say about Prime Minister of India Modi in hanging out in Israel? They were on the beach. It was so cute. They're in love, Bibi and Modi. And I was in India last week, as you know. I did my live stream from there, and I have never felt more low because I was just absorbing all the newspapers and stuff like that, and it is extraordinary. I mean, the hatred of Muslims, the hatred of poor people, the hatred, the country is sinking, basic contracts of buildings and cements and water supply, like buildings are collapsing, bridges are collapsing, like it is so bad. And it's just like these 3 4 billionaires that lead the country, and they are sending weapons to Israel and forging these deals. And Suchitra, you and I were in a meeting about global solidarity, global South solidarity, and I felt like, what global solidarity? There's nothing we can expect from this sick country. Once upon a time, to a degree, at least we could think about Palestine, at least Yasser Arafat or whatever. There was something. And now it's painful. And it's just the hatred of Muslims, all new level.
No, I also think, I mean, there are two things, right? I think one, there was, at least when I was growing up, there was a sense that there was some kind of relationship to our own history as colonized people, as like, as for me, the solidarity with Palestine comes simply because that we were colonized once. Like there should be that
Sure.
bare minimum understanding of that. But now, I mean, I'm not even expecting that bare minimum historical knowledge because that history has also been erased. But what was interesting for me is the defense deal that Modi is now getting, 8.6 billion. And what was really surprising for me, also understand that when Modi first comes to power, one of the first deals that Modi strikes with Israel is to hand over all of India's biometric data to Israel. So Israel has had access to India's biometric data for so long, and that is something that is never covered. That entire news and memo is now erased off of the internet. The second thing is the Iron Dome. Israel is now giving India its Iron Dome. This has never happened before. Israel has never shared this technology with anyone else. The fact that it's doing is interesting. And Modi was there giving the speech literally. Right now, the war against Iran or striking Iran is a conversation that is happening. And for me, the problem is that the way media is reporting on this is so problematic, as if that they've accomplished something. But I feel that the reason Netanyahu is called Modi is not because of any kind of civilizational relationship. It's because Netanyahu is realizing that he is losing the war. He is now putting together a ragtag team of whoever will listen because the conflict, or not the conflict, the violence and what's happened on the ground is to a point where Israel can no longer have the kind of power they used to have. They know they're losing it,
Mm.
and he needs people like India. He needs people
Inshallah,
like India.
Suchitra, may you live and prosper. May your words come
No,
true
no,
soon.
I mean, I really see that this alliance with India really is him putting together people who will, listen to him and support this, because rest of the world is become in the rest of the world, and vast majority of the world, support for Israel is an all-time low. One of the few exceptions is in India because of the anti-Muslim rhetoric that you said, Bhakti, where we are frothing in our mouth, celebrating as we see Palestinian children being killed. And I think that is exactly the kind of societies he's trying to build alliances with. A society that would cheer the killing. Even in the United States, that is so deeply funded by APAC, the sheer disgust at the kind of genocide and the violence these guys have done is everywhere. Even people who are not political, even people who are not speaking directly. The reason we have a Mamdani in mayor, as a mayor, is because he won on the back of the pro-Palestinian movement, not despite of it. But imagine which societies this violence is being applauded.
Hmm.
The biggest one is India. And that is the ally that he needs and he's seeking out. And that makes me so deeply ashamed as someone who's Indian, but also what that means for our own societies back home. And it's
That's the
just,
thing. So that is the thing. I think, like, as support for Israel, and starts to wane, I was looking at some of the reporting on, this deal and the transfer of technology, and it's all like landmark, historic, like words like that. And um, I mean, I think Modi's quote says it all in the Knesset. He said, "In today's uncertain world, a strong defense partnership between trusted partners like India and Israel is of vital importance." And so I just feel like, of course, you're right. The question is, what does this mean? Everywhere there is subtext, starting from, the State of the Union, where Trump was like, well, no more sanctuary cities, essentially, to this, where Modi is like, well, everything is really uncertain. No more Muslims in India, actually. It's really, really, really dire. And I mean, um, I think that it's like you said, it's not even like neutral. There is excitement around this deal. There is excitement around the fact that India will get the transfer of technology. They're not just getting weapons, we're getting the technology in order to be able to develop it on our own, in order to really be able to enter this arms race. I mean, I think, like, there is a statistic, if I'm not mistaken, that India is Israel's largest weapons market. And I think this is going to push that into the stratosphere, hurl it into the stratosphere. Um, but at the same time, India harbors these aspirations to be a huge weapons manufacturer and an arms selling nation. And what has always put India on the back foot in this regard is the fact that much more countries have much more advanced technology that we don't have. Boo-hoo. And so now, great. So now we can, start making arms and weapons to kill people around the world, Muslims around the world. So yeah, what does it mean? I think maybe it just feels like some crazy passing of the baton from one, genocidal nation to another, but it's really despicable. And the coverage is the exact opposite. It's like,
And what's so
funny. I mean, what was funny also was this last week, all of this makes it seem as if India is going to be on the cutting edge of innovation and tech and defense and all that. Just last week, there was this whole humiliating incident with this university they were at this expo for artificial intelligence, and this university had gathered all these contracts and money to provide education for artificial intelligence. And at the expo, they basically people immediately realized that they had showcased these robots, these dog robots, and everyone knew right away they had just been imported from China. So where did the money go, and what the hell happened? And then all the newspapers were buzzing with this idea how embarrassed they are, and oh my god, there's so much corruption, and where did the money go? You just brought these things from India, and they were all over. And now, this week everyone gets to be very excited and feel very cutting edge and feel like India's at the at a forerunner or, in something.
And I think connected to this is also the larger question of who and what is media doing. And one of the few journalists who's been consistently reporting on the Israel-India connections is Azad Isa. And Azad's Twitter account was withheld by the Indian government just last week for reporting on the Israel and the India connections. And I think it's important. I think that's an important factor too, because one, not only is there no actual mainstream coverage of this relationship, and you're actually going after the people who are doing this coverage by actually literally stopping Indians from having access to this kind of coverage. The other one is also important to understand that today, uh, the architectures of the digital authoritarianism that India deploys comes from Israel. Pegasus, I mean, India is one of the first countries to so joyfully bring in Pegasus. Some of India's political prisoners, including Stan Swamy, who's the oldest political prisoner to die in prison because of lack of medical care, again had Pegasus in. And so you have to understand that Israel's hand in any society, any community where the state is now deploying these kinds of surveillance technologies, tools, Israel's hand is in it. They are complicit in not only killing infrastructures of mass annihilation, they're also complicit in making sure that those who record about it, report on it, document it, fight against it, are all put under surveillance. These technologies are used to silence them. I mean, the sheer connections is just baffling. But
I want to. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. No, I just wanted to add one more point to that sanitizing aspect, which is the cultural sanitization of Israeli tourists. And so, Israeli tourists, obviously, their popularity is at an all-time low. And I say this because there is a trend, or there is a practice of IOF soldiers going to India after their service, to do yoga and to recuperate on the beaches of Goa, or to go to ashrams, or to go to the hills of to the Himalayas, Dehradun, Manali, Kasol, whatever, right? And so a lot of these formerly hippie tourist towns are now being called colloquially the hummus trail. And there's a lot of reporting that is being done about how the character of these towns is actually changing. There's like signs in Hebrew, and there's food, like Israeli food, whatever that is being offered. And basically these IOF soldiers are coming to India to recoup and, yoga themselves and wellness themselves out of if there is guilt for basically killing kids in Gaza. This is happening during the genocide, People have been pointing it out, but there is this real cultural sanitization that is also occurring of IOF operatives, soldiers.
Mhm.
So it's just like it's insane how this is all happening at the same time. I cannot imagine another country that is using wellness, spirituality, yoga, whatever, to sanitize the image of the IOF. So that is how bad. And of course, this cultural soft power is going a long, long, long way. And I just
Yeah.
wanted to offer it as an addition to what Suchitra said.
Absolutely, and it's old. It's more now, but it's old. In the 20s,
100%.
I was at one of these Vipassana meditations. I must have been 23, 24, and yeah, I had a roommate. I couldn't speak to her because you have to be in silence, and of course she was Israeli, and then her whole group of friends was also Israeli, and then later on I met them down in town and had drinks with them, and of course the owners of the hotels and the restaurants, they all speak Hebrew. They know and now this I'm talking like what, 25, 26, 27 years ago, and now it's like really synthesized into a proper way to engage with that commodity, which is the Israeli
Right. It's
tourist.
like laundering your soldiers in a way.
Yeah.
It's just so messed up. Yeah. Yeah.
I know,
It's
I
messed
know,
up.
I know.
Anyway.
But anyway, it's time for us to stop. And I just thought we could end on a cheerful note, which is I hope everyone saw the video today of the Israeli soldier who had occupied a house of somebody in Gaza. He was doing pull-ups, and then the wall came down, and he fell and he hit himself hard. I'm sure he's okay, but I'm glad he fell. I thought that was some kind of extremely sad uh, moment of cheer that's going around on social media. People are like thrilled to have seen him fall. Anyway, thanks to everyone who joined. Thanks, Madhuri. Thanks, Suchitra. And a lot of heavy stuff. And we'll be back with more heavy stuff, I'm sure, next week.
Next week.
Bye.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
I'm going to end it.